Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into the really complex truth behind the India-Pakistan ceasefire, because what might look like peace on paper is a much more complicated story on the ground.
So, did it work? It's a simple question, right? But the answer tells us so much about how modern conflict is changing. The real story here isn't just about the guns falling silent. It's about what rushed in to fill that silence.
To really get what a huge deal the 2021 agreement was, you have to understand just how bad things were right before it happened. I mean, we were looking at a situation that was a total powder keg. Just look at these numbers. They tell a pretty stark story. Leading up to 2021, the violence was just ramping up like crazy. In 2020 alone, there were over 5,000 ceasefire violations. That's an average of 14 incidents every single day, the highest it had been in almost 20 years. This was the chaotic baseline.
And then, in February 2021, something happened that nobody really saw coming. The top military commanders on both sides, the DGMOs, put out a joint statement. They weren't creating some brand new treaty, they just agreed to finally start following the old one from 2003 that had been ignored for years.
And the effect was just instantaneous. It was astonishing. The number of violations dropped from thousands a year to just 6 in the next 4 months. Imagine that. The daily sound of artillery and gunfire that had been the soundtrack to people's lives, it just stopped.
And this is the real impact, you know? For the people living right there on the line of control, this wasn't some abstract political victory. It meant their kids could finally go to school without being terrified. It meant farmers could go back to their fields. For the first time in what felt like forever, a little bit of normal life came back. But here's the twist. While the big guns went quiet, the conflict didn't actually end. It just changed its uniform. It traded in the loud, obvious violence for something much quieter, much more subtle, and, in many ways, way more complicated.
It's like the conflict itself just mutated. The old-school tools of war, artillery, mortars, all the loud stuff, they were put back in the box. And in their place, a whole new toolkit came out. A toolkit for a much quieter war, built around drones, drug smuggling, and covert infiltration.
So now, the new front line wasn't just a line on a map. It was in the air, patrolled by cheap, hard-to-detect drones. These little things quickly became the primary weapon, the main delivery system for this new phase of the conflict. Smuggling drugs, weapons, you name it.
And get a load of what these things were carrying. This wasn't just about reconnaissance. These drones became a flying supply chain for narco-terror networks, literally dropping heroin, guns, and even the parts to build bombs. It's a very deliberate blurring of the lines between crime and terrorism.
So you see, the ceasefire didn't so much bring peace as it brought a total paradigm shift. The danger was no longer an incoming mortar shell. Now it was a pilotless drone. And that's a completely different kind of threat. It's cheap, it's effective, and most importantly, it gives the user plausible deniability.
Okay, so this fragile new normal, this quiet war, was chugging along. But in the spring of 2025, it got a massive reality check that showed everybody just how thin that veneer of peace really was.
What kicked it all off was a deadly terrorist attack on tourists in April. India's response came in early May with a series of strikes. And just like that, for 4 nights in a row, the border was hot again. The old sounds of gunfire were back, and the consequences were immediate for civilians too. The Kartarpur Corridor for pilgrims was shut down, citing the new security risks.
Now, here's the crucial part. Technically, the 2021 agreement wasn't torn up. No one officially walked away. But that crisis proved a vital point. The peace it created was completely conditional. It showed just how brittle that stability was, and how one single event could flip the whole situation back to open violence in a heartbeat.
So, what does this new chessboard look like now? Well, as you'd expect, as the threat has adapted, so has the response. It's a constant game of cat and mouse.
To fight this quiet war, India is now deploying this really sophisticated 3-layered defense system. This isn't about getting bigger guns. It's all about smarter tech. We're talking about things like robotic surveillance systems, better ways of marking minefields, and a whole integrated, tech-heavy grid to seal the gaps against these quiet infiltration attempts.
But let's be honest, technology can't fix everything. There are these deep, underlying issues that keep the whole situation on a knife's edge. You've still got that extreme volatility, where one attack can set off a whole chain reaction. You've got the huge problem of plausible deniability with drones, and all of this is built on a foundation of deep historical mistrust and other diplomatic frictions that just add more and more pressure.
Okay, so let's boil it all down. What should you take away from this? First, the 2021 ceasefire was an absolute lifesaver, but it was no silver bullet. Second, the threat didn't go away. It just shifted into this messy, gray zone puzzle of drones and narco-terror. Third, that 2025 crisis. It was the ultimate proof that this ceasefire is totally conditional and can be upended by a single event. And that means, fourth, that today, being good at counter-drone tech is just as important as holding your fire.
All of this leaves us with a pretty big question about the future of conflict itself. Is the real challenge just getting the soldiers to stop shooting? Or is the real defining struggle of our time figuring out how to plug all these quiet, deniable loopholes that allow a war to keep going long after the guns have supposedly gone silent?